When she goes to bed, luminous phenomena appear, a reddish light. She feels a weakness in her hands, a sensation of warmth in her chest. The voice says, "I have played with death 100 times when you lived on N Street." She hears voices, and at the same time she has nausea and a kind of weight on her heart. The voice says, "I like to kill people." February 18th. The deprivation of her freedom is the most painful thing. The luminous phenomena continue. During the day, she continuously sees 2 points, and in the evening a sky blue light, which goes from the window to her bed, like the light from a projector. She also sees it when the lamp is turned off.
She began to have frequent episodes lasting hours or days, during which she lost all track of time and carried out acts automatically without being aware of them. She would stay away from work for days at a time and return thinking that it was only the following day.
Later, the visual and auditory illusions became much more frequent and dominated the whole of her feeling and thought. She believed that she was dead and decomposing, and that she was suffering from the plague. She asserted that her body was being handled in all kinds of revolting ways, and that she went through worse horrors than anyone could have imagined.
Things seemed to go from bad to worse. She continued to insist that her eyes were being closed by dreams, in order to rob her of her own visual impressions.
At first, she was fascinated and unable to see that it was all merely a matter of hallucinations, a delusional system composed of rays of light and the flickering of eclipses of multiple intensities.
She could no longer think what she wanted to think. Her thoughts were replaced by moving images. She was in a state of constant, sudden change as these dream visions drew her along.
She was forced to focus on fragments. The subject who replaced her was set at a place of endless movement. Identity became the function of repeated difference.
The images of one became the terms of the other's representation. The differences and not the similarities began to resemble each other. Perception and representation could no longer be differentiated. Representation continued to replace perception, and these endless hallucinations were mistaken for visions.
Production, reproduction, presentation, representation.
The clinical picture, however, is dominated by a depressive foundation. She whines, laments, complains about everything. We find that she has hypochondriacal delusions to the extent of negative ideas, delusions of ruin and some delusions of guilt. She doesn't see well anymore, she doesn't go to the toilet anymore, doesn't urinate, has nothing in her stomach, doesn't eat anything anymore except paper and scraps, has an empty head, has a cyst or a cancer in her rear, her brain is dried up, she has no more ideas, has water on the brain, has no money except for the 40 cents in her pocket, no clothes except for what she has on, no apartment, no name, no address. In a word, she has nothing.
When the voices are more frequent and more numerous, the atmosphere around her is saturated with light, and it causes an oppression in the interior of her heart and her lungs and a fog around her head. It may be that someone has drawn her portrait on a wall that is heavily charged with electricity. Someone speaks of this portrait, and she hears them. From the moment someone speaks, they speak from somewhere. Therefore it must be discovered from where it comes. The best thing perhaps would be to call the police to put a stop to these activities.
The Automatic Classroom, Lecture Number 37, Hallucination and Fantasy and Psychosis, a recorded and illustrated lecture accompanying the film The Case Histories of Schreber and Monroe. Psychosis may manifest itself in the form of fantasies, hallucinations, and dreams. The dream is a pathological product of the category, which includes hysterical symptoms, obsessions, and delusions. The dream is a hallucinatory psychosis of desire. Because the object of desire is hallucinated, the dream provides illusions of fulfillment. The dream is a projection. Allow me to illustrate.
The fallacy of the fetish. The pathetic fallacy of the fetish.
In that distant age, the erect phallus symbolized sovereign power, a supernatural or magic transcendent virility, the hope of resurrection and the force capable of producing it. The luminous principle, which tolerates neither shadows nor multiplicity and maintains the perpetually flourishing unity of being.
Indeed, as we found in the origin of the fetish, it is possible for the original instinct presentation to be split in two, one part undergoing repression, while the remainder, just on account of its intimate association with the other, undergoes idealization. The erotic male-female presentation is denied, is repressed, is displaced into the fetish object. Hollywood did not present a male-female dialectic, but a male-non-male castration, and the female becomes a phallic replacement.
She is turned in fantasy into a man, without herself becoming active in a masculine way, and is no longer anything but a spectator of the event, which takes the place of the sexual act. The fetish image portrayed here relates only to the male narcissism. Woman represents not herself, but by a process of displacement, the male phallus.
Woman as woman is absent, and the fetish image of the female star is idealized for the collective fantasy of phallocentrism.
The truth of our oppression cannot be captured on celluloid with the innocence of a camera. It has to be constructed, manufactured, made. A product of our objectification cannot be overcome simply by artistic examination. We must develop a means to interrogate the phallic cinema, to pierce its mysteries, to violate its space, to counter its thrust, to smash its metaphors. It is not enough to discuss the oppression of women within the text of the film. The language of the cinema, the depiction of reality, must also be interrogated, so that a break between ideology and text is effected.
On the wall before you persists a constantly moving image.
We're just two little girls from Little Rock.
Two hawks. There is only the male and the non-male. In order to be accepted into the male universe, the woman must become a man. Alternatively, she becomes woman as phallus. Marilyn Monroe in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
The French are glad to die for love. They delight in fighting duels. But I prefer a man who lives and gives expensive joy. A kiss of the hand may be quite continental, but diamonds are a girl's best friend. A kiss may be grand, but it won't pay the rental on your humble flat, or help you at the automat. Men grow cold as girls grow old, and we all lose our charms in the end. But square cut or pear shape, these rocks don't lose their shape.
But to move on, the woman as object and as subject is a difficult category, as we have noted. This structure may exist only insofar as the existence of a secondary object of desire is made more explicit. This further object being non-sexual, the result of this narrative option is invariably a desexualization of the text.
Girl's best friend. I've heard of affairs that are strictly platonic, but diamonds are a girl's best friend. And I think affairs that you must keep Masonic are better bets. If little pets get big baguettes.
Monroe is indeed the subject of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, but in so functioning she must lose her sexuality, herself as most important object, via the search for the ultimate object, diamonds, metamonic representatives of cold cash.
Time rolls on, and youth is gone, and you can't straighten up when you bend. But stiff back or stiff knees, you stand straight and kiss me.
The desire for the woman is the desire for the woman for power. Marilyn does not have the phallus, but she is the phallus, and indeed cinematically depicted as such.
A coded text consists of discrete units. A performance is continuous, graded rather than coded. A coded text consists of discrete units. A performance is continuous, graded rather than coded. A coded text consists of discrete units.
Between the form and the performance falls the shadow.
Between the form and the shadow falls the film.
Between the form and the film falls the performance.
Between the form and the fire falls the frame.
But between the form and the frame falls the screen.
The frozen frame fills the screen.
The constant screen freezes the frame.
But the screen is the absence which its whiteness protects. The sign is composed of signifier and signified, of signifier and signified. The signified is not a thing, but a mental representation of the thing. The signified is a concept, a mental image, the something. The signifier. The substances of the signifier is always material, such as sounds, images, or objects. The only difference is that the signifier is a mediator. Some matter is necessary to it. The substance of the signifier is always material, like an image. Signification is the act which binds the signifier and the signified into the sign.
The stroke separating the signifier and the signified is a stroke of castration.
The sign is a two-faced slice. Creating a cinematic sign composed of two graphic elements means that they are related as signifier and signified on another level. The whole sign becomes a signifier for purposes of performing analysis on the sign. Behind the signifier of Marilyn Monroe is the signified of the phallus. But this is illusory. The phallus is not a concrete mental image. It is the signifier of something else. The signifier of signifiers, the desire for desire.
Desire is a denial of reality, since every desire is a desire for images, or, what is worse, for images of images.
The phallus is a symbol of imaginary power. Monroe is an image of power, the power of vulnerability. Monroe is a signifier of the phallus, but the phallus only signifies blank leader.